Welkom in my Afrikaanse klas. Ons is besig met Kringe in die bos. Nou as jy die boek nog nie gesien het nie, dan moet jy hom so vinnig as moontlik kry en begin lees. Want dit is nogals 'n gewilde keuse by skole om hierdie boek te doen vir matriek. Goed, die eerste ding wat ek dadelik jou aandag op wil vestig is die woord kringe. Ons kan dit ook vervang met sirkels. En soos wat ons die werk gaan bespreek, gaan julle sien hoe belangrik hierdie simbool in die hele verhaal is. Goed, kom ons gaan dadelik aan. Ek wil net vir julle 'n prentjie wys. Daar's 'n foto van die boek se voorblad ook. En hier is die skrywer Daleen Matthee. Sy het ons ongelukkig ontval in 2005. But she was an amazing person. She had a sincere love for the forest in the Knysna area. As a child and a working person, she moved around a lot, baie rondgetrek vanweë haar man se beroep. Maar die Outeniqua bos, en dit is 'n ander naam vir die Knysna bos. Knysna, ek sal nou vir julle wys waar dit geografies is. Dit het haar absoluut bekoor en sy het begin om navorsing oor die bos te doen. Research. So die boek wat sy geskryf het oor die bos is gebaseer op 'n deel van die waarheid. Goed, sy het baie moeite gedoen om die bos te leer ken, to get to know the forest. So she walked a lot. She even slept there in the bush. And what she discovered was quite upsetting. In 1886, dis ongeveer toe die hoofkarakter van die boek Saul, 'n jongerige man van so 29 was daar ongeveer 500 olifante in die bos. Now you can just imagine 500 of these huge elephants. And what she discovered in her research was in 1972, there were only 12 left. So from that point to that point, something dramatic has happened. And part of what she tries to describe in her book is this, why did this decline happen? Goed, net om vir julle 'n idee te gee, die mense of van die karakters in die boek is houtkappers. Hulle noem hulle houtkappers. So they made a living out of chopping wood. And we'll come back to that point. Nou, om die boek te verstaan, it is really necessary to understand the historic and the social background, agtergrond. And I know it might be a bit hectic to sit through this, but if you don't understand the backdrop of the story, it's not going to make any sense to you. So die boek speel af van 1860 af, tot en met ongeveer toe Saul 29 jaar oud was. You can do the math. Saul Barnard, wat ons hoofkarakter is, nou ek wil net vinnig myself in die rede val, hy word nêrens so beskryf nie. He's not described as tall, dark and handsome, but that's sort of the idea that it forms in our heads, this quiet, strong, tall, handsome guy. Hy word gebore op 7 Januarie 1860. En die storie verloop Die storie speel uit binne die eerste 30 jaar van Saul se lewe. Met ander woorde, van 'n kind tot en met 29, 30 jaar oud. Goed, kom ons gaan aan, want ek wil kom by die geskiedkundige agtergrond. In daardie tyd was daar baie Hollanders aan die Kaap. Jan van Riebeeck and his people, lot of people from the Netherlands came, and they made up the biggest part of the society at that point. We all know that people from the Netherlands, die Hollanders, hulle kan baie moeilik wees. So they started moving away from the Cape into the inland parts, and they specifically went to the south of the Cape, there by Knysna. Kom ons skryf dit net neer, dis 'n moeilike woord vir julle, Knysna. En die ander belangrike plek in die storie is Swellendam. Ek sal nou vir julle wys waar dit geleë is. Goed, ons weet dat die Britte ook terug of na die Kaap toe gekom het. En op hierdie stadium wat Saul gebore is die land in beheer van die Britte, onder leiding van koningin Victoria. Die ontdekking van diamante, nou moet julle onthou, dit was in 1871, dit het begin hier aan die goudrif van Johannesburg, en dit het 'n verskriklike stormloop veroorsaak. Van oral oor het mense gekom om te delf vir goud. Hierdie ontdekking van diamante, now you can imagine, diamonds are discovered. People from all over the world flocked to South Africa to come and get part of this riches. You can imagine if there's all of a sudden hundreds of people coming to a specific place, it brings a big change. As ons kyk, sosiaal, is daar 'n groot verandering. Nou kry jy mense van allerhande rasse en opvoedings en almal kom by mekaar. Hulle moet 'n lewe maak, so daar gebeur baie dinge. Ek wil net gou terugkom na hierdie punt toe. Die Britte het skeepvaart, ons weet, selfs die Hollanders het baie gewerk met bote, en bote is gemaak van hout. So, daar was 'n groot aanvraag vir hout, omdat hulle wou meer bote bou. So dit moet julle ook in gedagte hou. So kom ons gaan aan. So daar was ook, afgesien van die bote, hierso het ons dit, was daar ook treine wat moes beginne funksioneer. En hierso kan julle sien in daai stukke wat jy so sien wat daar dwars is. Hulle word dwarsleers genoem en daar's 'n fout. Daai kappie moet op die eerste E wees. So die dwarsleers word gemaak van hout om treinspore te bou. So dit alles maak dat daar verskriklik baie hout benodig word. Nou wat Knysna 'n spesiale plek gemaak het in hierdie storie, is dat daar 'n hawe was. Dit is 'n klein hawetjie en dis 'n baie moeilike navigasie om in die hawe in te kom, maar skepe kon daar aandoen. The boats could dock there, and it helped the export of wood to Britain and other parts of Europe. So op hierdie punt is die Britte in beheer van die ekonomie. They were in charge. There were especially two British guys in Knysna. Remember, this happens in Knysna. Die een was Alexander MacDonald en die ander een was Smith. Ons weet nie wat sy naam was nie. Nou hulle is houtkopers. They were buying the wood from the wood cutters. So die houtkappers, dis woorde wat julle moet ken, hoor. Die houtkappers verskaf hout en dan die houtkopers koop dit dan by die houtkappers. Nou hierdie twee houtkopers het 'n monopolie gehad. They had a monopoly on buying wood. They were not nice people. Hulle het die houtkappers verskriklik uitgebuit. They really treated them very, very badly. We will talk about it again later, but they never gave them money for their wood. They gave them a little, what we will call a voucher today. They called it a good for. So they will get this voucher, good for whatever, and then they will take the voucher to the shop and will be able to buy sugar and coffee and whatever else they need. But it was not a very kind system. It kept the woodcutters in a way as slaves of the wood buyers. And we'll get back to this point. Goed, kom ons kyk 'n bietjie na die houtkappers. They were for decades and decades and decades in the bush. They did what their forefathers did. They saw how to cut the wood, cut the trees, chop it up, and they learned that skill from their forefathers. Daar's 'n konsep verknegting. They were actually made into modern slaves. Van die houtkopers. Baie van hulle kom van 'n Hollandse Duitse agtergrond en hier het daar alreeds 'n tipe van 'n kombuis Afrikaans tot stand gekom. They were really treated very badly. They were treated as people who are not worthy of anybody's kindness or goodness or nothing like that. Die Engelse en by name MacDonald en Smith het baie ryk geword. They accumulated a lot of money on the backs of these Dutch woodchoppers. They kept them oppressed, and then came the character of Saul Barnard. When Saul, and later on you will see when we get to the intrige van die storie, sal julle sien, Saul Barnard het aan die einde van die boek op die toneel verskyn as 'n regverdige houtkoper. So, ons sal nou kyk hoe hy in sy lewe ontwikkel het. Maar die feit dat hy mense menswaardig behandel het, he treated them as equals, that created a lot of tension between him and you can now imagine MacDonald and Smith. And not only because of the wood, but also because of MacDonald's daughter, Kate. So when he came onto the scene, he wanted to, hy wou die monopolie verbreek. And you can imagine, the minute there were now these two, they had the monopoly, and now this third person comes into the picture, you can just imagine how angry the British guys were about Saul that comes into the picture. Okay, kom ons kyk gou-gou. Ons is besig om te kyk na die houtkappers. Die houtkappers were in such a, they were between the devil and the deep blue sea, because they had to do whatever they could to survive. Dit het gegaan oor oorlewing. There was not a thought about conservation. Survival, conservation. And you can see, we're talking about the 1860s here. Even then, it was a contentious problem, because today we have the same. What do you do? Do you drill for oil in the sea and you wreck the whole sea ecology? It's that age-old question of where must our loyalty lie? Goed. Hierdie sin is belangrik. Die houtkappers was in die greep van die houtkopers. So the wood cutters, the wood choppers, were in the grip of the wood buyers. Now, because they had to survive, they just chopped off whatever they could find. Bring into this mix now the elephants. What do elephants have that is precious and worth a lot of money at that stage? The ivory. So they started killing the elephants for the ivory, because the British people also bought that. And again, it's this whole thing of they are destroying nature in order to survive. Add to this mix die ontdekking van goud in die bos, gold. So now you can imagine that people storming to that area trying to get gold didn't help to keep the forest and the elephants safe. So we've got a backdrop that is ready for huge conflict and problems. Okay, so what we can say at this point is the British guys, they had a huge part of really treating the houtkappers very badly. They destroyed the forest, and they destroyed the elephants in that whole thing of, I have to have more rich, more money. Geldgierigheid, their love for money. For money. And they made their money on the backs of these, daar's 'n T missing, these woodcutters who lived in the most horrific way in poverty. Guys, you can really do yourself a favor and just look at Google and see how these people survived. It is really actually quite bad. Okay, this is some pictures. Now, if you can see, here is the place where the boats can come in. And it was quite a navigation to get them through these little 2 heads, they call it the heads, where the boats had to come through. But you can see what it looked like in those days. Goed, so kom ons kyk gou na Knysna. Knysna was an Engels sprekende dorp, so the people spoke English. Saul leer ken vir Kate MacDonald when they were very small. I think he was 13 or 14, round about there. The big thing about their relationship was, their friendship, was that she taught him to read and write and understand English, which made him a good person to stand between the people out of the forest and the people in town. Later on in his life, he moved to Swellendam. Swellendam, you've heard that word. He was always regarded, in Knysna, he was always regarded as he's only the son of a woodcutter. So what he says is not really important. When he moved to Swellendam, his eyes opened up for a total new kind of existence. How people treated him. It just opened his eyes to how bad the situation actually is for the wood choppers, the woodcutters. And in all of this, the friendship between Saul and Kate was also problematic, because they had to keep their relationship, their friendship, a secret from her father, which is Alexander MacDonald. So yeah, lots of potential for conflict and problems, and this Alexander MacDonald is sort of the protagonist in this story. He is the one that gets under your nails. And his relationship with Saul was really very problematic. They came out of 2 different directions. He didn't regard Saul as a proper person. He didn't want him close to his daughter. And he had this arrogance about him. There's one place that he says to Paul, "Ek sal altyd wen, Barnard. I will always win." And this is actually quite ironic, because in the end, he doesn't. Daarso is verwysings, net om seker te maak dat julle weet waar ek al die inligting kry. Dit was nou die eerste paar stukkies van die legkaart. So, tot volgende keer sal ons verder werk en nog stukkies van die legkaart bysit.